Force Lotus podcast, where we dive deep into what is truly blocking your life force through ideas, modalities that will truly change you at a soul level by fueling your life force and allowing your amazing lotus flower to emerge from the murky waters. Hi, I'm Rosa, and I am an intuitive life coach and an energy worker on a mission to uncover deep inner truth within all of us so that we can live our best lives ever. Join me on this. Back to the podcast. With me today, I have a very special guest, Brett Lloyd, who I have had on the podcast before. He is here to share a very special story with us today. He was one of my very first episodes, actually, in 21 when I began this podcast. And he shared his amazing story of a metamorphosis with his health and his wellness. But today we're going to share a different story. But welcome to the podcast, Brett.
Thank you so much, Rosa. It's a pleasure to be back here, and I'm really looking forward to this discussion. We're both gonna break some personal ground today.
Yes,
and do something we've never done before.
Yeah, and as I've shared a lot recently, I really feel like especially this year, is the year of personal truth. Like, we really need to share a lot of our personal truths that we have been afraid to share for a long time, because the world needs it now more than ever. And for
I agree 100%.
Yes. And as we're going to share, you have a very special gift. And for people that don't know who you are, what you've been through already, do you want to share a little snapshot of, how you even were able to dig into the layers to discover your gifts that you have now? Your personal journey, how did that come about?
Sure. Well, first off, I would refer everybody who doesn't know anything about me to go back and watch the episode you mentioned earlier. Listen to it. Short Reader's Digest version. I suffered from chronic mental illness for 43 years of my life, and I discovered the carnivore lifestyle, and I began eating only meat and drinking only water. Today is my 2014th day of only eating meat and only drinking water. And I lost all of my mental illness symptoms. I lost all digestive issues. I haven't had a headache in over 5.5 years. Every aspect of my physiology has been dramatically improved. And along with that, my mental situation is just spectacular. I'm very much at peace. I don't experience anxiety. None of the symptoms have ever come back. I experience what I call effortless daily happiness each and every day of my life. And when I thought it couldn't get better, it did after the spiritual journey began. And that's what I'm really excited to share with you and your audience is my experience changing not just my mindset, but my whole approach to everything in life. Now, without carnivore, none of this takes place. Mm-hmm. And I will always be a carnivore because my sanity is directly tied to how I eat. And I prize my sanity at the top of all other earthly possessions. I won't ever jeopardize that. So as people listen, no, I'm not crazy. Haven't been for years. This is all very real. And this is exactly what has happened to me that I'm about to share. Starting towards the end of 2022 or the beginning of 2023, my wife and I found this fascinating documentary on Netflix called Ancient Apocalypse.
Yes.
And it's narrated by a gentleman named Graham Hancock. If you haven't seen it, please go watch it. And the whole premise of that series was he's in search of evidence of a pre-Diluvian, a flood civilization. And there's all kinds of evidence out there to indicate that, yes, humans have been around for many thousands of years longer than mainstream history, mainstream archaeology claims, like substantially longer, hundreds of thousands of years longer. And there's no evidence that evolution played a role.
Yes.
In fact, the opposite is true. Anyway, my wife and I watched that documentary and we were just amazed and blown away. And of course, it forced us to start asking questions about, we were Catholics. We loved being Catholic. But the Catholic Church claims that the humans have only been around for like 6,000 years. And we know that can't be true because in ancient Sumer, or in what is current day Iraq, they found written these cuneiform tablets that are in some cases 10 and 20,000 years old. And they have king's lists that go back over 100,000 years. So then that leads to the question, well, then okay, we know from physical evidence that history of the human species is far longer than any 6,000 year period of time. How is that? And I grew up, and I bet you did too, being taught that the Bible was the inspired word of God, and maybe at one time it was. And I'm not here to crap on Christianity or anybody's faith. I'm just here to share my experience. But even as a Catholic, I always had questions. Like, okay, we're supposed to believe the Adam and Eve story is exactly what happened. But at one point you have Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel. Cain kills Abel. That means there's only 3 other human beings on planet Earth at that time, according to the Genesis story. Well, God kicks Cain out of Eden, and he goes and finds a wife. Where the hell did she come from?
Yeah. I've read the Bible many times. Even this last year, I dove into it saying, oh, maybe this is the way. And as I read it, though, because I have so many truths within me, I started to read some of it and I said, this is not true. And don't ask me how I knew that, but I just knew there's parts of the Bible that are true. And there's parts that there's a knowing within me anyway that says, this is not true.
I can so relate to that in so many ways. And it wasn't a fun revelation. It was another instance. I mean, just to go back to the food and eating and human wellness issue, and I know, and we talked about it, we've been lied to about so many things.
Yes.
And we've been manipulated into believing falsehoods were true. Well, I kept doing research, and I found out the Bible has been edited over 50,000 times over the last couple of thousand years.
Yes.
And when you look at, and I've had people explain to me in a way I could understand, people who were Jewish scholars who could read the original Hebrew text and things of that nature, that would show exactly what words were changed. And they were all changed to inspire fear.
Yes.
And to more easily control any given population.
Yeah, and when you look at the big picture, because that I was inspired to do a lot of research over the last year too, because I wanted to know what are all these hidden truths that are out there. And yeah, it was basically a lot of the Bible, especially the King James version, that's why it's called the King James version. It was written for kings, basically. Yeah.
And it was reformulated. I mean, think about it, especially if you read the Bible many times, and the book of Deuteronomy had to stand out because the God in the book of Deuteronomy was a bloodthirsty SOB.
Yeah, and that's why as I read it, I said, this is not true. God is not, this is not God. This is not
No,
the God that I know. The God that I know loves everybody unconditionally.
exactly.
Unconditional love. It's not, if you do this thing, oh, I don't love you anymore. You know.
Yeah, I agree completely. And you know, I there's a gentleman named Billy Carson. I would encourage everybody who
I was
listens to
going to
this.
ask you if you followed him because I love that man. He
Yeah,
digs in and he's not afraid to ruffle some feathers.
no, he's not, and he's extraordinarily well researched. He's put the time in, and he can also disseminate enormous amounts of information very quickly and very
Yeah.
accurately. So I would encourage people go check out. He's even got his own TV network called Forbidden Knowledge.
Yes.
It's great stuff.
Yeah,
And if
and
you get
he,
a chance,
he's a wealth of knowledge and he is well studied. He's a scholar, I believe of the ancient knowledge.
I agree completely. And he explained to me in a way I could understand how the being that we've all been saying amen to
Oh, yes.
was a so-called God. It was really just another person. It was a pharaoh of Egypt who declared himself to be God.
Mhm.
And he declared that every prayer will be ended as an homage to me. And that's
Yeah.
where and his name was Amen or something. I can't ever pronounce those Egyptians' names, Amenhotep
Yeah.
or something like that. And I mean, I'm like, so now whenever I pray, instead of saying amen, I say, and so it is.
Oh,
Because
yes.
that's what I've learned at our metaphysical church that my wife and I now attend. And we learned so many things that at one point I was like, and we were still going to mass, but after about 6 weeks of that, I went to my wife and I said, I can't honestly go back there anymore because I'm just living a lie.
I was going to say,
If
if in your soul and your body it feels like you're living a lie, that's when I can't do certain things anymore.
exactly, exactly, and we talked about it. And, if she'd wanted to stay in the Catholic Church, I wasn't going to come, but she recognized as well. You know, she has a great way of explaining it. She said the Catholic Church, and I'm holding my fingers up for you folks who aren't seeing the video of this, listening on Spotify, about an inch and a half wide. She said the Catholic Church gives you this much of the story, but the whole story, and now I've got my arms spread out as far as I can spread them, is bigger than that.
Yes, it is.
And if you ask questions, the explanations you would get would be, oh, it's a mystery. You just need to have faith. That's a dodge to me. And I'm not blaming the priest. They're just telling you what they've been taught to regurgitate. And I just couldn't do it anymore. So after a couple of weeks of not going to mass, I'm like, we need some kind of a community. I still wasn't thinking in terms of spiritual gifts or anything like that. And I did a search here. I live in Jacksonville, Florida, and there's a lot of new agey churches around, but none of them really resonated with me at all as I'm looking at this. And one church kept showing up. It's called the Cosmic Church of Truth.
Oh, wow. How
First,
amazing.
yeah. And I did some research. They're on Facebook. They every Sunday morning, they're whoever's speaking, the message is played live on the Facebook, excuse me, and then stored, and it's up there forever. Anyway, so we go to this place, and I'm 2 steps inside the door, and my head starts filling up with energy immediately.
Oh.
At that time, I did not know that that's what was going on, but later it had it explained to me. And also 2 steps inside the door, somebody was going, "Oh, look at this new energy!" And I got a big hug from an elderly woman I did not know, and it was awesome.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
People were so glad to see us.
It's like you're coming home.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it felt like. And my wife will tell you, she's not somebody who's comfortable going into new environments for the first time, let alone meeting a new group of people. She's not an extrovert like I am. I'll go into anything and talk to anybody. I don't have,
yes,
that's just how I am. Mm-hmm. And she's very introverted, but she also felt immediately at home. And they had all these classes. Everybody who's a member of the church they got this big calendar. If you want to speak to the congregation, you put in your date and the topic you want to address, and when that Sunday rolls around, you're the speaker for that day.
Oh, that's amazing. So
the community's very, very involved. And I've never heard a boring talk, not once. It's always been very interesting, and very worthwhile. And sometimes they turn into big discussions because the church isn't very big. There's not, there might only be 30 people there, tops.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of space. That's another issue I'll address at a later date. Anyway, and they have this class on Friday nights called mediumship class. And basically what that is you come in, and the teacher, who's been doing this for 20 years, and she's only 44, but she's been teaching and practicing spiritualism for over 20 years.
Wow, that's amazing.
Very highly evolved individual, brilliant, very intelligent, and she don't take no graft from nobody. I love that about her. And so we started going to this class on Friday evenings, and basically she gives you what she calls terms as toilet reading. She passes out these papers with information. It's always something to do with the metaphysical. It might be about your chakras. It might be about meditation. Might be about something related to astrology. Just always metaphysical issues. Mm-hmm. And then she will either have an activity or a meditation. And that activity, like this past Friday, the activity was take a Post-it note and either write a object or a number on it, fold it up, and then put it in this basket. And then the basket would go around, and you would reach in blindly and grab one out, and then you would put it on your forehead around the area of your third eye. And the point was to see if you could sense what it was. Well, I blew it last Friday. I kept feeling the numbers or the letter O or the number 0. Turned out it was the number 4. So I was wrong. My wife got hers right.
Yeah.
Anyway, and then we go back into this other room that I call the circle room. We all sit in a circle around a candle. The lights go out. The leader, whose name is Kelly, she calls in protection. She has this series of prayers that she utters out loud. And then she says, "We are now open for messages." And I'd never been exposed to anything like that before. Now, needless to say, for the first couple of months, I didn't see or hear anything. I kept trying, but I had never meditated in my life.
Oh, yes.
And without meditation, spiritualism is pretty darn difficult to do.
Yeah.
And I had been one of those people who always, as a practicing Catholic, I always kind of looked down on meditation. I'm like, well, why don't you just pray? Anyhow, being completely ignorant of it. And so in the middle of June, I started meditating for the first time in my life. Come to find out, I'd really been meditating for years and didn't know it. Every time I play music, every time I would perform, that was a form of meditation.
Yes, it is.
I didn't know that. I did not know that at the time.
And it's also, you probably know this now, but your music that comes through you is also a form of channeling.
Yes, it is.
Something I recently learned about too is a lot of these musicians and artists, and even sometimes when you're very inspired, that is a form of channeling.
You are so correct. And we'll get more deeply into that here in a moment.
Yeah.
So after 2 months of going to this class, I'm starting I didn't expect things to happen instantly, but I thought maybe I would hear or see something. And so I finally got to where I was pretty good with meditation. I could get into that deep theta state, and I use a mantra to get myself down there. It's just a real simple, I am calm, I am quiet. And I repeat that mentally until I'm almost always calm anyway, thanks to carnivore. But the quiet, the monkey brain all shut up.
Mm-hmm.
And I decided on one Friday, it was August 4th of 2023, that I would approach that class as if it was just another form of meditation. And we're about 20 minutes, maybe 30 minutes into it. And I'm still hearing everything going on around me, but I'm still repeating my mantra. And then suddenly in my mind's eye, I could see a yellow ball of energy to the right of my mind's eye. And I knew that was me. That was my energy.
Hmm.
And I'm like, well, that's cool. And then suddenly, unexpectedly, let me assure you, there was a blue ball of energy to the left of my energy.
Hmm.
And I'm like, that's not mine. What the hell's going on here? And one thing that we had been taught from the beginning was is if something unusual that you didn't understand occur, bring it to the group. So I did. Can I come to the group? This is what's going on inside my head right now, and it's a little weird. I don't understand this. And the teacher said the following: "It sounds like somebody might be channeling soon." So I'm like, me? Now I knew about channeling because after we started going to that church, or right before we started going to that church, we got a Gaia network subscription.
I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. We're hardcore Gaia watchers. That's what we watch while we eat most every dinner we ever have now, and have for months and months. So I knew about it, but I'm thinking, nobody's going to want me to channel them. What, I'm just an old guitar player. I don't have, I can't see anything. I can't hear anything. And I just think, well, maybe this isn't what I thought it was. Maybe this is BS after all. And then a more seasoned, talented individual came to me 5 or 10 minutes later and said, Brett, there's an extraterrestrial standing right beside you, and they have sapphire eyes. And they want you to know that if you're willing, they will make a connection with you.
Oh my gosh.
And my
wow.
intuition literally jumped out of my stomach to turn and look at me and scream, do it, do it, do it.
Oh.
And I knew instinctively I needed to say yes to this. Don't know how. Well, I do know it was my intuition saying, hey, my guidance is saying, this is important. You need to say yes. And so I said yes. And I was introduced to a light energy being of the 10th dimension of Arcturian descent. She's not fully Arcturian, but her family originated on Arcturus, and her family line and a couple of other families left Arcturus in search of more knowledge, with the understanding that they would be able to ascend to a higher frequency, a higher dimension, if they did so. So I barely understand the concept of light energy beings until she shows up. And I'll never forget that ride home from class that night was joyful and a little weird, because I'm like, my first thought was, people are going to think I've gone nuts again. People are going to point at me, go, carnivore let him down finally. He's back to crazy Brett. And I knew I wasn't crazy. I knew it was real. And 3 days after that, my wife and I work one day, or she works full time at this print shop. And on Mondays, I work there part time, doing the nastiest job they have, and all outside with chemicals and water. And so when it gets cold, like it has been here recently, abnormally cold, it's not fun. Kind mind-numbingly dull too. So I listen to a lot of podcasts and audiobooks to keep from killing people out of boredom. And anyway, on that particular Monday, after Orna showed up on Friday the 4th, she told me, I want to speak to your wife. And that's when I channeled her for the very first time. And I'll never forget this if I live to be 10,000 years old. Suddenly, my wife's driving, and in my mind's eye, there were two scenes. There was one in the top left corner of my mind's eye where I'm face talking to my wife. And then on the bottom, I can hear my voice, but it's like it's from a great distance. And I could just see, I couldn't really see much of anything except my shoes, because I had my eyes closed. And Orna told my wife, don't worry, this is not a bad thing, because my wife was kind of concerned, because, hey, she'd seen me when I was nuts. She was concerned I was heading back down the path. Back to that. And Orna assured her, your marriage matters as much to me as it does to you, and it will never be allowed to do anything except continue to get better.
Oh, wow.
And she was very calming and reassuring. She did say, now Brett will make many mistakes, but he will make no mistakes that affect your marriage. And I remember, and it was only like a 5-minute conversation. And all Danielle could do was say, well, thank you. And she said later, she said, that was really weird. And I said, tell me about it. If you thought it was weird. And then I described for her what I was seeing while it was happening. And
Yeah.
that's the only time that Orna has addressed Danielle. But suddenly, I got curious and started asking questions. And her connection with me is, when I was the summer between my 5th and 6th grade year, I got hit by a car on a bicycle.
Oh.
And apparently, I suffered a small amount of brain damage that the equipment of that era, you're talking early 70s, could not detect. And interestingly enough, my parents told me years ago that before I got hit by the car, I was a happy boy. Everybody loved to be around me. I was a lot of fun. I was funny and I was joyful. Well, after I got hit by the car, I turned into this angry, dark thing. Always disagreeable, always easily angered, just the complete opposite of what I was before the accident. And I told my mom told me that. I'm like, I wish you'd have let me know that about 30 years sooner. I might have made some adjustments a little sooner than what ended up happening. But anyway, Orna took advantage of that brain damage and has a permanent telepathic connection with me. And at the time, I was using psilocybin mushrooms for medicinal purposes. And I would take 1 or 2 trips a month to facilitate neurogenesis, which exposed another lie we've been taught. Remember, we were taught when nerves are damaged, they don't repair themselves and new nerves are not grown. Well, that's pure BS. Pure BS. Because using psilocybin mushrooms, you can accomplish that. Well, Warnoff says to me, you don't need to do that anymore. Number one, it will negatively impact the connection. And number two, I can do those things for you. You just won't get high. And who am I to argue with a 10,000-year-old light energy being about anything?
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, what am I going to say? Okay, that's what I said. I said, okay, that's fine. And the reason for Orna coming to me, and she came to me the first time when I was 7 years old. I was in our backyard. I'll never forget this. A circle of sparkling lights appeared in front of me. And I could hear kind of a tinkling sound with them. And my head filled up with energy. Of course, at 7 years old, I didn't know that. My head felt funny. And I wasn't afraid in any way, shape, or form. There was nothing threatening about it. But I knew intuitively that I could not tell my parents about it because they would never understand, which turned out to be exactly the right call. And Orna, every 2 or 3 years, would do that just to see if I was willing, if I was comfortable, because for people who don't know this, every soul has free will. And that is taken very seriously. That is never violated for any reason. We always have the choice to say yes or no because of this free will we all have. Every one of us have, from the nicest human being to ever walk the earth to the most dastardly scoundrel. Every one of us have free will. And that will not be violated ever. And so then this incredible education started happening. After I got through the basic questions of where did you come from and why are you here, the reason for her mission on Earth, she was asked by Source itself to come to Earth to help spread a message of love and peacefulness across the planet in order to help facilitate the ascension of Gaia to the fifth dimension.
Oh my God.
We're trapped in a 3D world right now, even though it is trying to push its way upward to that higher frequency. That's something else. I learned everything vibrates at a frequency. This cup was with soda water in it, vibrates at a specific frequency. That frequency probably changes as I drink the water out of it. Mm-hmm. Everything has a frequency. And then also I learned that if there are electrons present, sentience is present. Everything we see and touch in our daily lives is sentient. Who knew that? I didn't have a clue.
Well,
I thought inanimate objects were just dead inanimate objects.
Yeah, and everything. And when you start to really dig in and find your truth within, you realize that everything is connected and we're all one.
That's exactly right. It's exactly right. And in reality, true reality, not the 3D reality, my friend Nina, who's helping me with the project that I'll get into again here in a bit, lives in San Diego. But in reality, she's always right beside me.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Because what we're perceiving as distance is an illusion. And I'm learning all of this stuff, and I'm like, holy crap, wonder what else we've been lied to about. What else have we been misinformed deliberately to keep us under the thumb of those who thrive on manipulation and control? And then I learned also about manifesting and how important it is to control what we think. Mm-hmm. That a negative thought goes out into the universe, even if we never speak it aloud to anyone, and it goes out into the universe and attracts other negative thoughts and then comes back to us. When I was suffering from chronic depression, I did that shit all day long because I was nothing but negative. Everything in my life was negative. And I continued to manifest more negativity. No wonder I got worse and worse year after year after year. But you can also do the opposite with manifesting. I manifested. People won't be able to see it. Maybe they'll hear this when I strum a chord. I manifested this guitar in December.
Oh, wow.
I laid it away thinking I won't be able to get it out to February. Mm-hmm. And I was fine with that. But the universe made sure I got it at Christmas time because there was enough abundance for me to get it out of layaway 2 months early.
Wow.
I manifested the band I'm in.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that a minute. Because that's another transformation I've seen over the last couple of years, is that you've really gotten into your music more. You're in bands, you're playing,
For years when I was sick, I didn't perform for like 13 years at all. Mm-hmm. And I couldn't, as far as my instruments concerned, there was a wall that I couldn't get through due to my mental illness. I could only, no matter how many hours I practiced, no matter how hard I worked, there was only a certain point that I could get to. I could never get past that point. Well, now I have no limits. I get out of it exactly what I put into it. I am playing at an extraordinarily high level that I never thought I would ever get to. I've been blessed to get to jam with some touring pros who I made a connection with as a fan. I got to a gig before they even showed up for it because it was first come, first served for the seating. And I knew I knew where I wanted to sit right in front of the artist's name is Albert Castilla. And I knew I wanted to sit right in front of Albert so I could watch and learn from watching him play guitar. The guy's brilliant. He's one of the greatest blues rock players in America today. And he travels the world. He's won like 3 blues awards in the last few years. He's just brilliant. And he's a super nice man, just a super kind individual. And after I saw them play the first time, actually, the first time I met them, I helped them bring their gear in. The club was up on the second floor of this two-floor building. And so they were ecstatic. I made sure they didn't have to make as many trips up and down those steps, carrying heavy stuff. And I didn't mind it. And I didn't ask for anything in return. And I'm watching them play. And I remember thinking, all 3, in just a 3-piece band, all 3 of these individuals are doing exactly what they love the most. Mm-hmm. And I'm thinking, why can't I do that? Why can't I do that? And suddenly, after I started believing that, things started improving as far as music. So I was able to get past that certain place that when I was crazy, I couldn't get past. And then I started sending Albert, I do this morning blues thing every morning, or five mornings a week. And it's really practice. It's not, and then I started using it as a lure, thinking if people looking for a guitar player to put in their band or to put a band together, that was, to me, that was like a fisherman throwing out some bait and trying to hook something. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, that's what occurred. A gentleman saw a couple of my videos, and then he went back through my Facebook and saw a whole lot more videos, and he's like, "Dang, this guy can rock a little bit." Yeah, and gave me a phone call, and we had an interesting conversation. And I've been playing with them. Matter of fact, we got a gig tonight.
Oh, nice.
Yes, we do.
How fun.
Albert, I started tagging Albert Castilla in all those videos. Oh. And then when I saw him perform next, it was in St. Augustine, Florida, and I was thinking, oh man, he's going to let me know he's still not practicing positive. This is way before we went to the church and all this stuff.
Yeah.
Like a year before. So me still thinking negatively was a thing. And I thought, well, he's going to end up telling me to stop sending those videos. That was my prediction. I walked in the restaurant venue that they were playing at, and he's eating. He sees me. Hey, so glad you came, Brett. And thank you for sending all those videos.
Oh my gosh.
He did not tell me to stop sending them. He thanked me. Well, this time, or early last fall, he was playing at the place that I saw him at first time. And the stage, he wanted me to come up and jam with him, but the stage was so small, I would have had to literally stand on somebody's shoulders. And that just, that ain't gonna work, especially since they're all shorter than me, etc. But he said something over the microphone to this packed room. He said, "Hey, you all, there's a local musician here that you all need to go hear. His name is Brett Lloyd."
Oh, yes.
So go hear. If you hear he's playing somewhere, you need to go listen to him.
Wow.
And I'll never forget this, Rosa. After the show, I got like 5 or 6 minutes with him, by just the two of us. And I'm like, Albert, every time I think I'm getting to be pretty good, I come to one of your shows and realize I've got more work to do. And he took his finger and he put it into my chest and he said, no, you are a great guitar player.
Aww.
Don't you ever doubt that. Well, needless to say, that was inspiring. So he basically endorsed me from the stage at his own gig, encouraged people to come watch me play, and then gave me that incredible, encouraging statement. And that's the kind of stuff that keeps happening to me on a regular basis. And back to how it ties into the metaphysical stuff. January of last year, I just knew I'm going to get to jam with him. And they were playing at Cafe 11 in St. Augustine again. And I packed my stage rig into the car. He and I never conversed. He would see those videos I posted, but he never commented on any of it. He just saw it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm thinking, I work up this speech in my head. Okay, Albert, I've got this yes or no question, and there's no wrong answer. And if the answer is no, it's not a problem. I'll still get to see you kick ass all night. I helped them bring gear in. We're standing, and it's a cold day in St. Augustine. I'll never forget that. We're standing there inside the club, right at the stage, and everybody's looking at the stage, thinking about where they're going to put stuff. And he just turns around out of the blue and he says, "You want to play tonight?"
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I would very much like to play tonight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. And there's videos on Instagram and on my YouTube channel and on my Facebook from that night. Well, this past December, I got to jam with him again at the same club.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
And I manifested that. And come to find out, I manifested the first time because for like the week prior to that, I had this positive feeling. I'm really going to get to jam with Albert Castillion.
Of course.
It's really going to happen. And I couldn't explain how I knew. I couldn't explain why I knew. It was before we got into any of this metaphysical stuff. And that's what happened. So manifesting is real, and people need to use it to their advantage on a day-to-day basis. And it's not about, oh, I'm going to manifest this 25,000 square foot mansion and with the pool and the tennis. And no, that's not really how it works.
Mm-hmm.
It's what do you want that the universe wants to give to you? And it's truly been a part of this incredible spiritual and emotional transformation. It's just been absolutely beautiful. Now, I've been talking a long time. Do you have a question?
No, I love it because it's all amazing things, and we're just sharing your journey, Brett.
Okay.
Sorry, there was a train going by a minute ago. I live in a beautiful mountain town where we have a train.
That's okay. I've lived near a train track before. I know how loud it can be.
Yes. But yeah, I love hearing your story, Brett. And I saw that yesterday that you had your first day working at something that you love to do, right?
It's the one thing in life I love a little bit more than music.
Mm-hmm.
And that's doing I call it intuitive therapy readings. Other people would call it a psychic reading. And even how I got into that, the universe was literally grabbing me by the nose and kind of leading me on. At our church, once a month, the second Saturday of every month, they have what's called a psychic fair. and it's to
Oh,
raise money for the church. And there'll be 7 or 8 readers there, and then there'll be a couple of Reiki healers. And I learned a lot from those people, not about how to do readings, but in getting readings. I learned a lot about myself that I was unaware of. And it was on a day of healing. On the day of healing, they only have 1 or 2 readers, and then mostly healers there. And I had just gotten this deck of oracle cards, angel answers cards. And they'd asked my wife to help with the front desk on that particular Saturday. And I just took these cards with me because they were delivered the day before, and I hadn't gone through the manual yet. And I thought, well, I'll just sit there and read this and do some trial spreads with these cards and see if I can figure it out. None of the scheduled readers showed up that day. And 2 people came in asking for readings. And the president of the board of the church was in charge that day. And he looks at me, he says, "You know how to use those cards?" I said, "Yeah, kind of." He said, "You're up."
oh my gosh.
Now, I couldn't have planned that. There's no way in the world I could have schemed or even thought of that ever recurring. And this is the interesting thing about it, Rosa. I did carnivore coaching for 5 years, pretty much.
Yes. Yeah.
What I realized 30 seconds into the first reading, I was comfortable. I wasn't nervous. It was just like doing a carnivore coaching session, except instead of doing it via Zoom, I had a person across a table from me. And I remember remarking about that to my wife, and she said, "Honey, I've listened to you do all kinds of coaching sessions, and I know to a certainty you were doing readings that you were completely unaware of." I used to facilitate when I worked for that company, whose name I no longer mention anymore after they threw a bunch of us away here back last year. Anyway, that's their karma, not mine. And
exactly.
And I facilitated 2 and 3 mental health meetings a week there for a couple of years, and then I stepped away from it in January of 2023 because it was taking up more time, and it was getting in the way of me coaching people individually.
Yeah.
But I would be facilitating those meetings, and after they'd be over, I would get phone calls from people who were there going, "Where did you get that incredibly profound notion from?" And I'm like, "What in the hell are you talking about? I don't remember saying anything that was particularly profound. I'm Brett. I cuss like a sailor and I play guitar. What am I going to say that's profound?" But it kept happening over and over again. And I now know I was doing a form of psychic reading. I was reading and feeling people's energy.
Yeah.
I am literally a human lie detector. If somebody's lying to me or to themselves, I detect it with great accuracy. I've come to learn I'm a bit of an empath. I used to go with my wife to the grocery store on the weekly supply runs, which is what she's doing right now.
Yeah.
And but I got to where I see all these sad, horribly sad stories. These people, they're got the sunken in eyes and the cart's full of sugar and shit. And I'm just, I had to stop going with it. It was starting to bring me down, and I wasn't going to let anything bring me back down again, ever, for any reason. Now I know how to protect myself against that from happening, but I had no clue then. I had no clue then. So that's how I got into reading. And then a few weeks later, they plugged me in for the November psychic fair. And it was the greatest experience I'd ever had in my life. I mean, I've played on stage in front of thousands of people before, and it was a great rush, and I'll treasure that memory always. But it wasn't nothing compared to the satisfaction I would feel and the joy that I felt doing the readings, seeing the light go off in people's eyes as they got to hear what they needed to hear, not what they wanted to hear, but what they needed to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I'm yesterday I got was my first day working a job in the mall here in the Avenues Mall here in Jacksonville, Florida,
Mm-hmm.
at a store called Triskel Cove. And Friday I'm their psychic reader.
That's amazing.
It was an incredible day. I only did 2 readings,
Mm-hmm.
but I had some incredible conversations with some people who've been into the metaphysical side of life a lot longer than me.
Mm-hmm.
And I still have so much growing to do. Even with Orna around, I'm still basically a neophyte. Now, Orna allows me to shortcut some things. Yes, I have been asked to call forth a deceased relative or partner a few times. And basically what I do is, all right, Orna, here's their name. Go get them and bring them to me.
Oh, wow.
And she does. And it's just an incredible thing to be able to see people's hearts fill with joy that were, you know, when they first sat down there, they were miserable. And it's just been the most incredible blessing. And ultimately, my goal right now is I'm going to stick with the band till the end of this year. And then there's another project that I'll start talking about next.
Yeah.
Regarding Orna. But I'll probably step away from the band at the end of 2024 so that I can focus entirely upon reading for people and turning it into a career.
Oh,
because
that's
the
amazing.
great thing about being a reader is there's no age limit. As
No?
long as you're there cognitively and spiritually, you can do it until your last breath with great accuracy.
Yeah.
And you can make a much better living doing that than you can as a musician playing in clubs on weekends. To say
Yeah.
least. Back to Orna. Orna's reason for connecting with me, she is on a mission to teach everyone who needs to hear that peace and love are the universal truths that need to be practiced every moment of every day. And in doing so, planet Earth, Mother Gaia, if you will finally ascend out of this 3D reality into the 5th dimension. But Brett, why are you skipping the 4th dimension? That doesn't make sense. Oh, yes, it does, because the 4th dimension is where souls go in between incarnations. In between incarnations, Brett, that's reincarnation. Oh my gosh, that's devil talk. Oh, what's wrong with you?
That's what I was going to ask you. How did you always believe in reincarnation, or was there a point where you learned, or it was given to you, some kind of aha moment with that?
The aha moment came when I had one of the ladies at church was getting her quantum healing hypnosis technique certification.
Oh, yeah.
And part of that process is doing a set number of free sessions before you can get certified. You have to do all this documentation of the session, etc.
Mhm.
And so I had two of those. The first one was focused on my early childhood and some traumatic crap that I went through growing up. The second one, and I told the lady that was facilitating this, I don't want to be in this lifetime with any of this, because my wife had had a regression the week prior, and she got to experience two past lives.
Oh, wow.
And my wife would sooner slit her own throat as to lie to you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I got to experience three past lives.
Wow.
The most recent one, I was a Filipino male, married, had a daughter, a young 4-year-old daughter, minding my own business, and then the Japanese invaded the Philippines.
Oh, wow.
And they wasted me on a battlefield.
Oh, geez.
And I got to learn a lot from that. I learned that my guardian angel has been with me since the very first incarnation.
Oh, what? Really?
Yeah, yeah. She's been there
Oh,
for every one of them, and
that's amazing.
and I don't think about it as much now as I did initially, because I can get really emotional. I mean, you talk about a loving commitment.
Yeah.
How do you honor that? Something that voluminous and profound.
Mm-hmm.
And then in another past life, it was around 11 or 1200 AD. It was in somewhere in Northern Europe. It was cold as shit. It was muddy. This village that I lived in was, I call it the mud homes, because everything, there was just mud everywhere.
Oh, gosh.
Everybody was dirt. Hygiene was not easy to come by. You jump in the water to wash yourself, well, you'll probably come down with pneumonia in less than a week,
Mm-hmm.
because everything was so dirty. But I was good with a bow and arrow. And I caught a lot of game for my family, my extended family, and shared what I could with the village as a whole. And I died in that lifetime. Some drunken nobles came on horseback and knocked the village down and killed everybody there that they could kill.
Oh,
I had two
gosh.
sons then. One son escaped. My wife was run over by somebody on horseback, and I took a bunch of them out. But ultimately, they flanked me with another proficient archer and took me out that way. And then the third and final past life I was an American Indian living in the United States before the white men came. And I was really tall, and they called me Big Bird.
No.
Or no, they called me Tall Bird, not Big Bird, Tall Bird. Sesame Street's Big Bird. They called me Tall Bird.
Yeah.
And I was a hunter there, and I was very proficient at killing buffalo for food.
Mm.
And I got to live out that life and die a natural death, a death of
Oh.
honor. I was like 83, 84 years old, which, I'd been an elder of the tribe for decades, and they had like a 3-day party celebration when I passed. It was wonderful.
Wow.
And I died in satisfaction and peace. I remember that very clearly. So that, talk about a game changer. Here I was steeped in all this Catholicism, and man should approach his salvation in fear and trembling. Well, why the hell do I need to be afraid? What's the purpose of the fear?
Yeah.
Because I felt no fear in any of these other past lives. There was never a fearful component. And after I learned about the validity of reincarnation, I haven't, since that moment, I haven't been afraid of anything, not even for a moment. And I'm not afraid to die because I know what happens. It's only the physical body. I know that I'll be given the opportunity to reincarnate if I so choose. I will never be forced to reincarnate. It'll always be a choice. And I can also choose to reincarnate somewhere else besides planet Earth.
Yeah. Now, did you have any reincarnations on other planets in any of your regressions?
None of those came up in regressions,
Mm-hmm.
but I've heard from my dear friend Orna that yes, I have tried incarnations on different planets a couple of times. I've mostly been just coming back to the schoolyard we call Earth.
Yeah.
Now my wife has had some other incarnations where she was galactic as all get out.
Yeah.
And I know I've got connections to the galactic, but I don't fully know exactly how far back they go, and that hasn't been made clear for me yet.
And maybe in fact, it's something that you don't really need to know yet, is what I've
That's exactly what I was about to say.
Okay.
Exactly. It's like during the second past life regression, you get to ask a list of questions to have the facilitator ask your higher self. And one of those that I asked was, am I an old soul? Have I had many reincarnations or not? And the answer was, Brett doesn't need to know that answer yet.
Oh. Interesting.
And I was like, well, that's not what I was looking for. But that happens sometimes. Sometimes the answer is no. You know, one of the cool things with Orna, they were having these classes at our church and charging $100 for them to learn how to astral travel. Well, I can go anywhere I want to by just asking Orna, hey, can we go see the Great Pyramid? Can we go inside it? And we astral travel there. She won't let me go to Mars though. I really want to go to Mars, but she says the energy there is too dark, and while she could protect me, it's not worth the risk.
Oh.
She said after you've evolved more, maybe you can go then it'll be safe. But right now it's not safe for you to be there. Again, who am I to argue with somebody like Orna?
Yeah.
I mean, and I've learned about my guidance. I've got a music guide named Elias. I've got an administrative guide named Aram, which I think's my soul has an administrator. I don't know. I haven't, it's never really been explained to me how that works. I got one guy that's the gatekeeper. Nobody gets to talk to me without going through him.
Wow.
In the spirit world. And ultimately, if they get past him, then they got to get past Orna. She is the ultimate protector.
Wow.
And speaking of Orna, in order for her to get her message out to people, you can't get on any of the metaphysical podcasts. You can't get on Gaia unless you got a book.
Oh, yeah.
And so we just finished last Wednesday, session 9 of a book. I'm not going to give you the title yet, but there are 9 transcripts of those discussions. Orna told me at the very beginning, she said, whatever is going to be needed to make this happen will all be provided.
Yes.
And that's how I met my friend Nina that I mentioned. Nina's an interesting lady. She bought the very first carnivore t-shirt my wife ever sold.
Oh, wow.
And Nina and I never conversed. I knew she was on Instagram, but we just never conversed. And because She lives in San Diego. I live, there's that 3-hour difference. I didn't know anything about her, and she only knew me from the interviews and stuff that I had done about my carnivore journey. And then a few weeks after Orna showed up, I just happened to cross Nina's Instagram page, suddenly appeared for the first time ever.
Oh, wow.
On my screen. And it's galactic this, it's QHHT that, she's got on her YouTube page, she's got some audio from her sessions, some of her sessions. And I come to find out this lady is steeped in spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And I just send her a message. I'm like, hey, I just came across your page, and I knew you were around. Oh, and she started coming and listening to my blues all of a sudden, out of the blue.
Oh, wow.
and she talks about this. She's like, I'm not a blues aficionado, but there's something about the energy that you put into your music that resonates with me.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, lots of times I will meditate to what you're playing.
Oh, wow.
Which was very cool to hear. Anyway, so I just sent her a message and said, I'm experiencing this and into that. And, I think I'm supposed to have a conversation with you.
Mm-hmm.
And right on Instagram, private video thing, we had the first conversation. And then she sent me a Zoom link a couple of days later, and I introduced Orna to her, or introduced to Nina Orna.
Oh, wow.
And she could feel Orna's energy instantly. Nina's much more evolved than I am, much more evolved. And Nina can feel Orna's energy even when Orna's not talking to her. And it was a perfect fit. Orna is keeping her part of the bargain. Now, we've only got one more session to do, and then the editing process begins.
Oh, wow.
And the reason why I mentioned that is yesterday, through the course of just shooting the breeze while we're killing time, waiting for customers to come in or somebody to come in that wanted a reading,
mm-hmm.
I find out that one of my coworkers is a legitimate, with experience, book editor.
Oh, yes.
Now, I couldn't have put that. I mean, again, it's the universe at work here.
I was going to say, they put that in the line for you.
Big time, big time. And,
yeah.
And I've told this lady, she's really sweet gal. She's only 26, which made me feel like 110 as we were conversing at times.
Mm-hmm.
I said, now, if you don't resonate with this, it's no problem. But she was so excited because I had to share the whole Orna story with her. And she's like, that's amazing. And this, you're really doing this. And I sent her right there via email the first session. I said, now read this and then get back to me with what, because Orna, I hear myself talk all the time. You've seen all the videos I've done and talks I've given over the years. I get sick and tired. I get sick and tired of the sound of my own voice.
yeah.
And what Nina does after we finish the session she'll always send me the Zoom video and the audio, always. And I can't listen to the audio because it just drives me crazy because I'm only hearing my voice. I'm not hearing Orna's words. And
okay.
Orna uses my voice, but her vocabulary is her manner of speaking.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I know it's I've heard other channels before, and their whole demeanor changes, their mannerism changes, their tone of voice. What changes when you channel?
Well, I talk more softly. And there's a cadence to how she speaks that I don't have. And her vocabulary is vastly different than mine.
Yeah.
And when I read the transcripts, I can literally feel her talking. Because when the channeling is taking place, I'm oblivious to most all of it. Yeah, I might pick up a few words here and there.
And that's that's the classic thing that I've heard from true channelers. There's all different kind of forms of it. Like trance, just full on trance channeling. And some people, they say that it's literally like they have to step aside and let this other energy come in, but they don't even remember anything. A lot of people.
Well, see, because she's always connected to me, I don't have to wait. I don't have to go through. I've heard that Daryl Anka guy who channels Bashar talk about all these things that he has to do mentally and whatnot, and I'm like, geez, I've got it made. I just have to show up and close my eyes.
I was gonna say,
right, Orna,
you have really tapped into something, Brett, because your process it seems really quick. And because like I know that I've been meditating since like 2017, but it took me a very long time to get to where I am even now. And I feel like there's a lot of beings that have been trying to come through me, but it's hard to get to that inner peace within, I guess. Point.
If you have any fear within you, that will always be an inhibitor. That's the biggest thing. That's why if you haven't had a QHHT session, go get one.
That's my next mission is I have a lady here in town and I've already emailed her and gonna set up a session with her. Her sessions she does only once. Like she says, we'll only do one session, and so it's an all-day session. It's like 5-something hours. And so it's quite the commitment for me. And I know there's other HT therapists that will do, shorter sessions too. So I'm kind of looking into my options as well.
Something else I would encourage you and everyone listening to this to do. I can't remember his first name, but there's an author named Newton, like Isaac Newton, only his first name's not Isaac.
Oh, okay.
And he is a former atheist. He's written 3 very profound books. He's a psychologist. He started using hypnosis to help patients deal with trauma, etc., and help eliminate anxiety. And by accident, he regressed one lady into a past life.
Oh, wow.
He never believed in any of that till that moment. Blew his mind. And so he began making that a part of his practice to regress people into a past life. And then he started documenting he took all these cases and he put together 3 books: Destiny of Souls, Journey of Souls, and I can't remember the name of the 3rd book.
Okay.
But I highly recommend those. He's got a documentary on Gaia in the documentary section of the Gaia channel.
Okay.
And I can't remember the title of it off the top of my head, but in that documentary, there are videos of him doing a session with a client. And you see people get emotional. They're learning and discovering things about themselves and we now know that things that happen in past lives can have an impact on our current lives. For my family, on my father's side of the family tree, mental illness was a big problem.
Yes.
People would develop it and never get better. I've had several distant relatives who literally died in old-fashioned insane asylums.
Oh man.
Which I can't imagine. This is like the 1700s.
Oh gosh.
And
yeah.
I just can't imagine what a horrible existence that was for them. But I broke the cycle.
Well, that's what I was going to mention, Brett, is that I believe right now we're living in a time where we can heal all of that pain and suffering from all of our past lives and our ancestors. So we get to help heal,
That's so true.
Amazing.
It's incredible. And I got to speak to my grandmother, who I never met. My dad's mother passed away when he was 12, so I never got to meet her. But I called to her in a meditation just to see if, I was still experimenting at the time. And she came forward and she said, "I want to thank you for finally breaking the curse of the family."
Oh my gosh. Whoa. That's amazing.
And that's the only conversation I've had with her.
Wow.
But it was incredible. I'll never forget that as long as I live either. And wonderful things keep happening, things that I could never have put together to make possible on my own for any reason. I'm not, it's like all the people would tell me about carnivore. I wish I had your discipline. I wish I had your willpower. And I'm like, folks, I'm just flesh and bone like everybody else. I don't have a great reservoir of willpower. I just didn't want to be crazy anymore.
Well, yeah, I hear that a lot, and I don't believe it has to do with willpower. I think it has to do with what are you willing to do to get to the place where you want to be.
Exactly. And, I have been told, and it continues to bear out as truth, that as long as I continue my meditation practice, I'm going to continue to grow spiritually, and I will be given things to learn and do when I'm capable of succeeding at. And part of my every meditation is my intent. You set an intention. My intention today is to hear from my guidance, from my ascended master, my higher self, and hopefully from source itself. And I don't always get messages, but lots of times I do. And they're always very useful and helpful.
Yeah.
And that's something I never do with my guidance. I never argue with my guidance. They never tell me something that I never think, well, that's a crock. That's never going to happen. I accept it as truth because they don't have to be helping me. But that's their sole purpose for existing now, is to help me. Just as your guides, their sole purpose is to help you. And everybody's got this. Everybody's got an intuition. But we've been taught by the manipulators, the kings and queens of misinformation and lies about so many things. No, focus on your intellect. use your intellect. That's what makes humans truly special, is their intellect, their intelligence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a crock of crap. Our intuition, never, ever will it mislead us. It never lies to us. Its sole agenda, it's there to guide us to what we want and need to see and do.
Mm-hmm.
And that's such an important reality. And if people listening to this only take that away, we have been successful.
Well, yeah, I think that's something that was the first part of really getting to know myself. Even going to carnivore, I meditated. I meditated on it, like, what do I need to do to heal? I was at my wit's end, and I kept seeing, I need to eat meat. I kept seeing meat. I'm like, what meat? You know, and yep, sure enough, that was what I need to do, is just focused on that. And now I can incorporate a few things here and there, but it's always my foundation. And then there's an inner knowing that led me to many, people. Emily, which is our dear friend. And she is actually the one that sent me, recently a video of you. And she said, look, Brett's waking up. And I hadn't heard you talk for a while. And I said, there is a different energy right there. When I heard you talk, and I hadn't, like I said, I hadn't heard you talk in a while. And I said, Brett is different. He has changed. And it was just this more, you were already calm, but it was like a different calmness that I saw.
It's a deeper sense of calm.
Mm-hmm.
And especially since Orna arrived, even my wife, after a month, I didn't have to say anything. She said, you have calmed way down, because I could still get annoyed and I could still get irritated, and I could go from 0 to 1,000 with anger for a few seconds, just like that.
Mm-hmm.
In a meditation, it came to me that everything I've ever destroyed in my life was good for me. I did it through anger.
Mm-hmm.
And so I asked Source, and when I say Source, I mean God, the Creator,
mm-hmm.
The infinite source of love, light, and energy, the creator of all things. And so I offered up, I said, okay, why don't you take away my ability to create and or experience anger, and let's replace it with mindfulness, greater mindfulness, and greater peacefulness.
Mm-hmm.
And that's exactly what's happened. I do on occasion get annoyed.
Yeah,
just
and
because
that's natural.
That's part of being a spiritual being, having a human existence.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't go from 0 to 1,000. You can't offend me. It's just like the first time I announced on Instagram that I was not going to mass anymore and that I was practicing spiritualism. I had, a host of naysayers come out and say some pretty, mostly inaccurate. I won't say they were awful, because I think they were speaking from a position of ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
This is all satanic. This is all very dark. Everybody should stop following Brett. So I woke up this morning to a message on Instagram. Stop following this man. He's trying to lead you away from Christ. No, I'm not. Mm-hmm. I don't engage in anything satanic. I don't engage in anything dark. And hey, by the way, Satan is a man-made idea. Satan doesn't really exist.
Yes.
And I'm sure we'll get some lovely mail for that. And that's fine. But it's the truth. Mm-hmm. We were not put on this earth.
It's a control mechanism.
To suffer needlessly. And the powers who love to manipulate and control and move us around like marionettes on a string came up with the idea of Satan. Something to fear. And there's nothing to fear. There really isn't anything to be afraid of. There just isn't. Eventually, my heart's going to run out of beats and this body is going to cease to function.
Mm-hmm.
And my only hope is that when that day comes, I've completed all the tasks that I promised to attempt before I came down for this lifetime, so that I don't have to go through certain things ever again. And one other thing I'm doing in that regard is I've got a list of requirements for my next incarnation. I will be born into a practicing spiritualist home. I will learn about the carnivore lifestyle before the age of 10.
Wow.
Those are non-negotiable.
And have you asked your higher self in these sessions about that carnivore experience?
Not specifically.
Mm-hmm.
When I talk to my higher self, it's more about inquiring, okay, I might have a question about something spiritually related. Mostly my questions revolve around, what do I need to learn next? Is there something I'm supposed to learn next? Is there something I need to improve first before I can learn the next new thing?
Oh, okay.
That's how my questions tend to go, because my ego now is about yay big, and I'm holding up about an inch. Mm-hmm. For those not able to see this.
Yeah.
I try to keep it there, because otherwise it's intrusive and aggravating, and it causes me to take steps backwards when I only want to be moving forward. And everything I do is just so joyful all the time. I mean, having this conversation is a joyful experience for me.
I agree. We're exchanging energy.
Yes, we are. It's a fair exchange, equal exchange of energy, and it's very fairly done.
And we're going to be really projecting this energy out into the masses. We're going to be opening people's minds a little bit, I hope.
So.
And, I know this is a conversation that, a lot of people put off even talking a little spiritual. They say, oh, it's so woo-woo. I don't want to get woo-woo on you, but, and so now it's time to take the blinders off, right? And say, you know what, I'm going to talk about it all. We're going to put it out there, because we are going through a time in humanity, right?
Mm-hmm.
A time when, things are going to really change and shake us even more than it's been done.
2024 is going to be a very tumultuous year for most people who are not awake. And when I say awake, I don't mean woke. I mean they're awake and aware of what's really going on. Mm-hmm. And we, the manipulators who've lied to us for centuries, are actually losing the war.
Yes.
There's a lady named Wendy. I think it's Wendy Williams is her name. She's a channeler. She channels a collective of Palladians.
Yes.
And she said humanity.
I listened to her.
And she recently talked about on the Into the Vortex show about how most of humanity is completely oblivious to this, that starting in 2019, the frequency war began. And it will continue till about 2026. And then there will be a true public first contact with other beings. That's something else that's been amazing. All these planet Earth now, there are more people channeling because there are more beings coming at the request of Source to help more humans come to understand and spread the message. There's only really one universal tool that's useful for humans, and that's love. Mm-hmm. Everything every question can be answered if love is a part of the answer. Every problem, every trial, every challenge can be met and overcome if you use love first. And that's what Orna's message is all about. I mean, she does talk about a lot of things that are not necessarily new. She talks about what happens in between incarnations. She talks about, death is just the physical experience that the body undergoes, but the soul continues onward. She waxed eloquent about the need for the family unit, mothers and fathers together, raising children. Those kinds of pairings create stronger communities. And I'm not crapping on anybody who might be gay and married. It has nothing to do with you in that regard. Mm-hmm. But it's proven scientifically that children who are raised with both parents are better beings for their community than they would be as if only one parent were present. And we know about the power of meditation. A gentleman named Greg Braden, since you're familiar with Gaia, I'm sure you've heard of Greg Braden. Mm-hmm. He explained that several studies were done a few years ago where they would get 1,000 people to meditate in a community, a high crime community. And the meditation would be focused on lowering crime or eliminating crime. And statistically, crime would come down.
Yeah,
by
I saw
enormous
that.
Enormous amounts.
It's amazing what we can all do with the power of our minds if we think on the same thought together. And
that's exactly right.
It's a power of manifestation, intention, and bringing the energies.
And see, that's part of what Orna wants to accomplish. She encourages people to get together in five-person groups once a week to meditate for 30 minutes on bringing nothing but love and peace to the planet.
Wow.
And then that message, the universe spreads that those thoughts and meditations and prayers go out into the universe and they attract more of the same. And then they come back and then the community grows. It's like growing this enormous tree with an endless number of branches. We're not going to have to convert everybody on the planet to this idea. Just the people who want to serve the light of the one creator. That's all we need. And we're going to succeed. In our lifetime, we should see it if we live long enough.
Yes, I love it, Brett. And I've loved our conversation. I want to ask you, how can people follow you? And what, you're writing a book, or you and Orna are writing a book, right? Together.
It's Orna's book. I'm just the vessel that she speaks through.
Yes. And I can't wait for it.
And Nina's like the MC of the whole thing.
Yes.
And I would encourage people to go out and find and read the Law of One by Ra.
Oh, that's on my list to read. I just got introduced to that, to the person that channels Ra.
I highly encourage everybody to read that book. It was channeling done in the 1980s when, and then you can actually go hear the raw audio from that.
Oh yeah,
which is for me, you can go hear it for free. I can't listen to it for very long because it's one word every 3 to 5 seconds. Greetings, 2, 3, 4, 5. In, 2, 3. The name, you know, and after a while, I'm just like, I can't listen to it.
Well,
But,
and you know what I've heard is like the earlier channelers, that's kind of how it had to come through, and now it seems like we're becoming more advanced, so the channels are coming through a lot faster with the energy.
and well, the collective consciousness is vibrating at a higher frequency than it was in the 1980s. That contributes as well. And people don't realize we are all connected.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody on planet Earth is connected to everybody else.
Yeah.
And that's so important. If we started treating each other the way we choose to be treated, that connection will spread that joy that comes from living like that to everyone else. We're just so fortunate to be in this time period. And I can't thank you enough for this opportunity to share this. There's so much more.
Oh, I know. I feel like I can talk to you forever, Brett.
We can have many 2-hour conversations and not feel like any time has passed at all.
Yeah, I feel like I just started talking to you, but we've covered so much, I know. You know, but I know that my audience is really going to love this conversation. And I know that you're going to help so many people, Brett. You've already helped so many people, but now you get to help even more people on the planet.
I'm honored to have that privilege, and I am thankful for the opportunity. People can find me on Instagram at thankful.carnivore. You can find me on Twitter, where censorship no longer exists. At Stickman Bleeding, that's STICKMANBLEEDIN. Do not add a G. And of course, you can find me as Brett Lloyd on Facebook. I also have a Thankful Carnivore Facebook page as well that's tied together to my Instagram account. And I'm happy to answer questions. Somebody today said, I'd love to hear where you talk about why you made this change from Catholicism to spiritualism. And this is going to be the link I give them.
Oh my gosh.
Once it's available.
Oh, I'm so honored, Brett. I'm so honored. You know, there's a deep connection. There really is. I can feel it.
Thank you.
I feel it in my whole body right now.
I love your energy. I love your energy. You've got great energy, and you've got your own story to tell.
Yes.
And
I will be telling more about my story, and I'm going to tell you, we're going to talk about, you know, your story. Everyone's stories matter.
Yes, they do. Yes, they do. And if there's anything I can do to help you get that story out there, don't hesitate to ask.
I sure won't.
But I've enjoyed this so very much. And this is the very first time I've talked about these things in public at this length. So I appreciate you so much for giving me this chance to finally talk about these realities. These are not delusions. These are not mistakes of thought or of choice. These are real, sincere truths.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you have to, if people don't want to believe where the message is coming from, maybe they can just hear the message that is being portrayed, and they can see, does this resonate with me? If it doesn't at the time, don't listen, you know. But I think we can just listen to the message and not question even where it's coming from.
And if people have questions, concerns that they'd like to address, reach out to me in private on Instagram. I don't want to argue about it in public. In fact, I will not argue about it in public. If you want to have a discussion, if you disagree with what I'm saying, that's fine. That's part of your free will. Mm-hmm. You want to address those concerns to me, please do so in private. I'm happy to have those conversations. but I'm not going to spread a bunch of negativity across my social media, because that's the antithesis to what I'm hoping to accomplish.
Exactly. And I love that. I love your approach, Brett, because I think that's the right way to go about it. Because if we keep feeding into the negative, we're just going to get more negative back, like we talked about. And so we just want to put the positive love and light out there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I look forward to the next opportunity that we get to speak, because I already know what we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about metaphysical stuff.
Yes, I love it.
Because once you dive into this particular swimming pool, that's all that you want to talk about.
Exactly. That's all I've been the past really year. It's amped up for me. And I've learned all these things. It's really a relearning because we already know it. It's just it has to be activated in our field. And so once it is, there's no going back. You're like, oh yeah, I remember. Okay.
We are so fortunate.
Yes. Well, I'm going to leave you with this, Brett. I've loved talking to you, and I can't wait for our next conversation together.
Thank you so much, Rosa. And I look forward to that conversation with great anticipation. And I wish you a beautiful weekend full of love, light, and peace.
Thank you, Brett.
Thank you.